There we go. Hey, it's Michael Clark. How you doing, man?
Great, Dave. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. So you're keeping busy, huh?
Yeah. Been busy, man. Been working pretty solid for over a year now. So grateful for that.
Yeah. How do you handle that? Like, how do you handle, because production isn't just an 8-hour day. Man, you're rocking out for, I mean, you're doing like 12-hour days at least, right?
At least. Yeah. Yeah. It's, you just kind of plug in and go, man. It's just to the wall. I had a couple years where I didn't do anything for 5 months, or I didn't participate in any major, I didn't sign on to a project. I had taken years off, 2 years, do the show and then take the time off and come back and do the show again and take that. It's kind of like a really long summer vacation when you're a kid. It kind of felt like a teacher. It was really nice. But I kind of wanted to buckle down this year and kind of, work as much as I could, and graciously got a gig that started right after and ended up working all the way through the year and haven't stopped. So we get a nice break in December. That's good. That's coming up.
That's good. Are you gonna go? Are you gonna pick up anything else? Or are you just gonna be like, okay, yeah.
No, I got to take some time off. It would by the end of this run, it would be 17 months.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Wait. No, sorry, 19 months.
That's obscene. Because you only really get weekends off and maybe like
holidays. You get a couple long weekends and you just take advantage of them. And sit inside the house. Even though most of our work is outside all the time, I still get outside and try to just enjoy those times. Some weekends, I don't know how bad the week was, we'll definitely just chill out the entire weekend and not even get out of bed.
Yeah, I mean, you're outside. I mean, I was there for I got to adjust the level a little bit for one of those exteriors. A couple years ago. I mean, it's no picnic. I mean, you're working. You're at your cart. You're doing your thing.
The last time you showed up?
Yeah, when they were doing the stunt.
Car chases and stunts and people getting hit.
Yeah.
It was a good time. You came on a good day.
Yeah.
Sometimes visitors can come and they don't even, obviously they're only available certain days, and they come in and they get a studio day of, if it was just like your first day you showed up, it was a studio day and we were, inside a hallway with 2 actors just talking dialogue, and you didn't get to see any walkers and you didn't get to see any fights or anything. So the second one was a nice one to see.
The first one was great as like a warm up. Like if okay, I'm probably going to come back, because that was during the prison time on the show. And for those that don't know, that we're talking about The Walking Dead. And it was cool to see the actors, and it was cool to see the set, because when you watch the show, I know how shows are made, but even so, you watch it and you're like, is that a set, or are they really shooting in a prison?
Right.
Because it looked really good. And then, I got the tour, and you guys gave me the tour, and I saw everything, and it was like, oh wow, this is super mega impressive. And then, so that's like a good warm up to then when you come again and you happen to ride the shuttle bus with walkers. They're like, yeah, okay, Dave, either go ahead and get on, and you jump on, and there's like 4 of them.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, geez, all right. And they didn't talk. They didn't talk to me at all. And like, there's 2, the driver and someone else in the front seats, and then and the 2 in the front, they're talking, like how you do. And then I just kind of turn around, and they're like, they're all staring at me like they're hungry. And I'm like, oh man, they're already in character.
Yeah, they're in character. They take it seriously,
Yeah, they have to.
It's really nice though for visitors to see those, because they really they get the realization that a lot of that practical makeup it's all practical. So many people think a lot of it's fake and they just digitally put that stuff in, but Nick Taro and his group do an amazing job of making them look really realistic. And if you can hang around at lunch when you have a whole group like that, it's even funnier watching them stuff cookies inside these mouths that are decaying and trying to watch them eat.
Yeah, I remember when we broke for lunch, like they all sat at there wasn't a huge group of them that day.
Yeah.
And but they all sat at their table by themselves, and nobody talked. Yeah. I remember someone, I can't remember who, if it was Robert or somebody else saying like they have to be, some of them, if they have like makeup that's like where their jaws all, they have to be really careful when they eat, or they can only use a straw. And it's, man, that's, yeah, that's tough.
And we've seen some guys struggle and you just want to like, can I do that? Can I help you out in some way? Let me break that up for you. So
yeah.
The handler feeding them.
So that's, I noticed when I was there, like the crew, it's not a huge crew. I've been on some shows that are like real big, but it seems really tight. Like everybody was really cool to me. People I had never met before, they came up and were like, oh, I don't know if they knew a visitor was coming or what, but they were like, oh, hey, nice to see you. Thanks for coming. And
yeah,
it was like, wow, that was really, you could just tell like the vibe. Everybody was just really copacetic. Is that a crew that's like been working? Is that all the same people for a long time?
Pretty much most of the major players have been there since the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah, it really creates a massive family vibe and energy. Everybody wants to know what you did last weekend, and it's a lot of talk, just amongst everybody. But within all that, you still get your sibling rivalries.
Yeah. Is it? Do you find, because how many seasons you been on The Walking Dead now?
I started mid-season 3.
Mid-season. So it's 3 or 4 now, right?
Going into season, I'm finishing up 5 seasons, I guess, because we're just about to finish mid-season on season 8. Season 8 right now. We'll be mid-season in about a month.
Man, it's been that long. Wow. Well, yeah, it came out. I remember it came out when I was living in Vegas. So that was like 2009, 2010.
Yeah, 2009, I believe. Yeah. Yeah,
and I remember the first season came out, and I was like, I don't know. I like zombie stuff, but I'm like, zombie TV show. So I didn't watch the first season. And then I kept hearing from people, oh my God, The Walking Dead, you guys see The Walking Dead? All right. So it came out on Netflix. So we had Netflix at the time. And so we just binge watched the first season, and it was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. So then we've been hooked ever since.
Yeah, I was a fan of it before I got on it. I wanted to see what this was all about. There's a lot of talk within the community, the film community here in Atlanta, and I didn't know about it being a comic book. I had no clue of it. It was off my radar, but a lot of guys that we knew, were working on it and wanted to check it out. And I was floored. First episode, watched the premiere. My wife at the time went to bed early. She didn't really care for it and didn't want to watch it. And I watched it the next morning, and I was like, "You gotta watch this. This is so good."
Yeah. It's funny. My wife was originally, early on in our relationship, she wasn't into scary stuff or horror or anything like that. And like now she loves, like last night we watched The Conjuring 2, and she's like really into that kind of stuff now. And it's like, yes, I've turned her. Yeah. But something like, Walking Dead is something that she might not have been into, but because it's not just a zombie show where people get ripped apart for the sake of it. It's like there's well, sometimes you have those scenes, but for the most part, like that's not every episode.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really about, and it's funny, you go back and you look at the beginning and you just see how like, is Rick really a good guy? Like, in
the current storytelling, it's a definitely common dialogue. It's like, who is really the worst?
Yeah.
Are they good people or not? It's tough putting yourself in that situation. And I think that's the draw that everybody has. It's like they want to, they don't want to be in that situation, but they enjoy riding that wave.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting how I love how the show, like at the beginning, like they never call them zombies, do they? They're just walkers.
Never have. They call them many things, but never zombie.
Is there a reason they don't say it's zombie, or?
You'd have to ask Kirkman that one. I'm sure he's touched up on it. I think he's talked about it within his comic books. At the back of his comics, he has, a like letter to the editor kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
Because within the comics themselves, he does the same thing. Each group kind of has their own little term for it because, that's the first thing that just proliferated within their community.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because
I honestly don't know the exact thing, but I'm sure it has probably just wanted to kind of not call them zombies, is what everybody always knew them as, like.
yeah. Yeah, a friend of mine's an author in the UK, and he wrote a novella. It was a zombie fiction novella a couple years ago, and then he podcasted it. And he, said, "I'm going to do something that hasn't been done in quite some time. I'm going to actually call the characters in this stories are actually going to call them zombies." So, but what I was going to say earlier was it's interesting to see how at the beginning of the series there, where it's like, oh shit, zombies, and now it's like, they're treated as like a minor pest. These people are so grizzled and hardened that it's like, okay, it's not a problem if there's a handful of them. It's only a problem if there's a mob of a couple of hundred. And
now it's a big hold my beer moment.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but do you find it like, since you've been on, I sometimes I've seen with folks that have been on a series for a long time that it's like, I don't want to say people forget them, that they're a mixer out there working, but sometimes I've seen guys that like they do a series, they've been on it for 5, 6, 7, 8 seasons, and then they have a hard time finding work.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you probably haven't, since you've been doing this and you did Stranger Things season 2. I guess not, but
no, it's actually kind of hard. I'm those last 2 seasons where I this last year aside, prior to that, it was very challenging actually finding work. I wanted to get work in between the show. I ended up just day playing, doing a lot of second unit and supporting the other, the rest of the community and helping them get, those things kind of taken care of. I wanted to get a show. I wanted to get a feature. I find it hard for a TV guy to get into doing features here in Atlanta. And then doing a show, I did a couple pilots from here and there, and when the shows come up, they just overlap, and it's really difficult to pull that off. So you kind of get stuck doing the show. Not sure what would happen at the end of this show when it finishes. I hope that work is in Atlanta is so hot right now that hopefully by the time this show ends or the time I decide to walk away, that there's still opportunities to be had.
Yeah, it's really jamming down there. I mean, that's someone posted an article online. There's like a couple of hundred. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah. It
hasn't
more since 2009.
Yeah, I mean, more than people realize. People don't realize how much stuff's going on there. But Kevin Turkey Eye was telling me there was they did like the Divergent series down there.
Yeah.
I was, oh, really? Like,
yeah.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yep. Peter had been down here working quite a bit, with that. And we were just here with, Kevin wasn't here, but Peter was here for Black Panther.
They did Black Panther there?
Yes.
Atlanta was Wakanda. Yeah, that's
actually they're sharing stages with them earlier this year. So yeah, they're there.
Wow.
Marvel's got a good footprint here in Atlanta right now. They're doing quite a bit here, and John Pritchett's here doing the Avengers $1 billion movie.
Infinity War?
For a full year, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's right, because Whit did Ant-Man down there a couple years ago.
I think they're gearing up to do Ant-Man 2. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, it's so busy. King Kong's about to, or not King Kong, Godzilla? I think is, yeah, there's so much. There's so much. Rampage was shot here, another big action feature. Yeah, lots of big stuff.
Wow. So, wow, that's pretty incredible. It's that's really good. So, like, is that?
I mean, Flip and did Spider-Man that was out here, Homecoming. Yeah.
Is that like if a lot of times when people like come out of school or whatever and they're like, oh, I'm going to go to LA, like would Atlanta be a good choice as well, like to get started as a utility? Is like because there are a lot of like low budget non-union stuff happening.
Oh yeah, it's all here. There's lots here. As a new person coming into the business, Atlanta would definitely be a place to consider. There's a lot going on. And they would have to obviously sow their oats on these smaller independents, and they're definitely here. They're definitely still, as every town is.
Yeah.
Maybe not coming, maybe getting experience in another town and coming in with some stronger experience would be the better route as well. Who knows? Everyone's route into this business is so different.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I was talking to Jan about how she got her start, and it just kind of, a lot of times it seems, when you talk with folks of that got their start, 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was so different from now. And even when I graduated from college in 2001 and, I had a degree in sound engineering, did you go on that same path, or did you just, some of the older folks, God, that sounds so bad, but the folks, the folks that have been doing it a while, they just kind of like fell into it, or they knew a guy and that's how they got in. How did that work out for you when you were kind of getting?
Yeah. So, music is what has pulled me into this industry. I think that's common with a lot of people, drum set behind you.
Yeah. Same with me. Yeah.
I think that is that initial grab into the sound world for many people is, as a kid, you just listening to music. That's what I did. I loved listening to the radio, listening to new stuff, and wanted to get into doing recording. Got to college, I did radio station, and I edited inside the little studio for all the years I was there, and decided I didn't want to do business. I didn't want to do finance. I was cool with this, cutting reel to reel tape and, and whatnot in the studio. I ended up thinking I got to do that. And found, I studied all the different schools in America that could teach me how to record bands. That's what I wanted to do, is record music. And, I was guided down into Orlando and ended up going to Full Sail.
Oh, okay.
Back when it was just an associate's program. Now it's a university. Now it's a huge, 4-year thing that you go into. And God, I couldn't even imagine what the tuition of that place is right now, because it was outrageous when I was there for 1 year.
Oh wow, it's not cheap. I know a couple of folks that went there, and they I don't know if you know Thomas Pop. I worked with him at Coffee Sound, and he's doing utility and boom, but he went there and he graduated like a year after I did, and he was telling me the stuff they had to do. I was like, wow, that's when I had heard Full Sail, I was like, yeah, it's a small thing. And,
yeah, it's legit. I mean, you got the top gear in the world at your fingertips. It's just most people don't ever touch it again for another 10, 15 years. And by then the gear has changed.
Yeah.
The greatest thing you get out of it is the concepts and, the ideas and the theory and all that. And as long as you grab that, then being out there in the real world that's the real learning experience. So I went there, and when I was, like every kid, I want to go to LA or New York, and Atlanta at that time had Crawford Audio, which was a big audio house, and I wanted to. By the time I was in there, while I was at school, I decided to switch from music and do post production. I wanted to do post. I was like, it's so creative. I remember, doing all this creative work in school. I was like, this is what's really appealing to me. And it's what kind of pulled me into the film world, and getting into Atlanta and trying to get into post production. They wanted you to be an intern, and in order to be an intern, you had to be in school. And I was done. Full Sail is a 1-year super intensive training program that you don't have time off. You work, you're in there for 13 months. That's when I was there. And it's 24 hours a day and 8 hours a day, and you're done. And then there's no summer break to allow for internship. So I couldn't get into any of those places. I found a little small boutique full production house called Woe Films. And they allowed me to intern for them without having to get credit. And eventually they decided to start paying me just to hang out and kind of work on improving their studio. They were building a studio at the time. And so they started paying me. And on their first production, I met a guy named Jay Tyser, who was working for Mike Filosa and I ended up falling underneath his wing, and he kind of taught me everything about, mostly E&G ag work and working with clients, getting in, doing a lot of just over the shoulder E&G work, fixing cables with him, organizing stuff, learning gear, So I went from a Nagra in school, recording the first little student films on a Nagra 4S, and jumping right into a Diva 2.
Oh, wow. That's a big jump. You skipped right over DAT.
Yeah, completely. I think I had to do a couple projects with the DAC, and what a pain. But, Mike was one of the first adopters in Atlanta for the Diva, and, I got to play around with it first job I was ever on.
Wow. And you're like, what's this glorified CD radio? Like, how do I, you function, like going through the menus.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed. And so I went from analog to digital in, a month or two.
Wow. So that was like probably in the early 2000s?
99.
Or 99? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the Diva.
Actually January of 2000.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, a lot of, like you said, a lot of people, start doing the music thing, and I was kind of the same way. I went to a school. When I went to school, there was not a lot of I wanted to do sound design, but not a lot of sound design programs. Like the school I went to, we had a sound design project, but we were this was in 2000, 99 or 2000. And not 2000. We were the first, my senior class, we were the first class to use Pro Tools. It was Pro Tools 5 on OS 9.
Yeah.
Let's hope it still works. You get into the studio, you boot it up, and you're like, please don't lock up. But yeah, in my class, we only had 12 guys, and that was a big class. But yeah, I mean, it was the same thing, studio engineering. I thought about doing, this was in Chicago. So everybody's, a lot of the guys are interns at recording studios and whatnot, but all they did was get sandwiches and empty the trash. I'm like, I don't want to do that. But yeah, I interned at Dane Tracks, which they took at that time in 2001, they were taking just about anybody. You could be somebody that doesn't know anything about audio, and they bring them in and they're doing stuff. But then they changed it to what you were talking about, where it's all like college students and they wanted to get credit, and they kind of phased out. So a lot of the interns that were there, we were just because we were hoping to get hired, which never happened, and moved on. But yeah, everybody's got a very interesting journey. It's different for everybody, it seems like.
Yeah, and so in a lot of ways, I kind of fell into it as well, because when I was at Woe Films, I was really more interested in. The only reason why I liked interning for them was that they had a Pro Tools suite, so they let me go in there and just kind of play around with it and muck around. And I didn't really. Location sound wasn't really on the radar, even though I did it in school. It wasn't like, ooh, that's cool, I want to do that. It just ended up being the job that paid the bills at first, It's like, I wouldn't, okay, fine. I'll start learning. No problem. Yeah.
It's interesting. It seems like, because I've lived on both sides. Mm-hmm. I haven't done I've done way more posts than I have production. I've done, a little bit of production, but it's like, I don't know if just because my time at Coffee Sound and the people I know there, it's like I could have it had been an easier time for me, not that it was easy, but an easier time for me to get into production than it was for post. Mm-hmm. It seemed like everybody and their brother wanted to be a sound designer, sound editor, and it was so hard to just try and get a job that paid something. Yeah. And it's like I've had people say, "Oh, you come be my utility," or this or that. And it's like, I don't know if I can handle the long days. And,
they're long days.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, when I was just starting out, now I have 4 boys, but it's, with one, he was real little. We moved him to LA when he was 6 months old. It's like, kind of want to be there and stuff, but it's an interesting world. It's very different. People don't realize how different the production work is. You know, it's like, oh, we only have a 12-hour day.
Yeah. Yay.
Yeah. You know,
depending on how far you have to drive, and a lot of people in LA, you know, I'm sure can attest to that. Is even on a 12-hour day, you're still doing a 14-hour day.
Yeah, even if you only live 2 miles from out there, if you're 2 miles from where you're shooting, it's still, you know, could be an hour one way.
Yeah.
But so you were in LA and then you just moved to Atlanta?
No, my full sale I went to was in Orlando. So I met my ex-wife in Orlando, and she was very, you know, wanted to be close to home, and moving to LA and New York was a big stretch, too far away from family that never went to. So we ended up settling on Atlanta because I figured they had at least some form of post-production. There was creative sound solutions, Crawford. There was at least a handful of post houses that I felt confident I could get into, and I just couldn't.
That's how it is. Like, I know everything.
Yeah. Well, you hoped that something would come around. You had options, but, you know, just it wasn't there. You know, nothing felt right either. You know, and so it just all lined up eventually, and started working with Filosa. Worked with him for about 4 years and did a lot of, you know, like I said, a lot of E&G stuff. And but through him as well, got hooked up with Good Eats. And that's where I first started doing cart-based mixing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, that sounds about like around the time when Good Eats started. So you got on with them right from the beginning, huh?
No. Another show I came in mid-season.
Oh, okay.
We started season 5.
Oh, okay.
They had 4 seasons under their belt with another production company. And they broke off, and that's when Elton started his own production company. And that's when the look of the show changed pretty significantly. And Food Network decided that told them that they needed a sound person. So the first 4 years, they never had a sound person. It was just cameras, and they literally stuck the mic on them and action.
Wow.
And so there's some really funny miking techniques that are going on in those first 4 years. But I'm sure even the first couple after that, 5 and 6, because that's where I was learning. I mean, this is the first time I really had to deal with a dramatic piece and working with wardrobe on a deeper level, more consistent level, as opposed to doing, you know, just a random one-day E&G job.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could definitely, because they still run those episodes, and we still watch it. And, you know, we'll be flipping around. It's like, oh, it's, you know, the episode with the blueberries or the this or the that. And it's like, my wife would be like, oh, this must be one of the early seasons, because it's like you can totally tell. But that show was on for a long time.
We did 14 seasons.
Wow.
14 seasons, 248 episodes, I think, something like that, over 14, or was it 12 seasons? Yes, over 15 years or something like that. It was pretty crazy. I myself did 185 of them, according to IMDb. It was easier to keep track. Thank God.
Yeah, I was looking at that. Where's
the only way I actually counted one time, I was able to just click all the seasons, and then they just counted it for me. I'm like, oh, okay.
But yeah, I went to, I think, 2011 or something like that. I'm looking at it here. Yeah, 2001 to 2011. Man, that's a run.
Yeah, it was nice. I mean, it wasn't like your typical TV show where we shoot, you know, everything at once. We actually took time in between. So we had 3 blocks of shooting where we would shoot for 6 weeks, and then we'd have time off, and then we shoot another 6 weeks, and time off, and another 6 weeks. And they're only, and we would shoot like 5 or 7 episodes per block. And it was a very small crew. It's literally one person per department.
Wow.
Except for the props and culinary. They had the most people. Everybody else was one. You know, I was the only sound guy. Just one electric guy, one grip guy, one camera guy. He didn't have any assistants.
Was that in an actual real like house kitchen, or was that a set that was built?
Yeah, well, it ended up becoming a set, but it started off in a house. The producers bought a house and they built that kitchen inside of it and designed it so that we can hang lights from the ceiling. So there's like speed rail up in the ceiling and whatnot, with little holes that just drop in, so we can just do everything, put a grid up and do everything. And it was in a house. First two seasons, seasons 5 and 6. And then one neighbor got all cranky. They're shooting production in, the residential neighborhood, and the city zoning came in and told them he had to move, so we moved it to a stage. We literally had to rebuild the set and move it to a stage, and ended up shooting on stage from that point forward.
People shooting homes all the time.
It was too consistent, too much, apparently for her. And we actually did a really great job of not making an imprint on the neighborhood. Crew parking was, at a church down the street. We would just bring a van in and drop us off. And like I said, the crew's one person per crew. It's not a huge amount of people. We don't shoot outside. The only thing that was interfering was you'd see, 12Ks hanging outside, bouncing into the window.
Yeah.
That's it. We're not loud. It was kind of ridiculous, but apparently they knew somebody on the city council and they, decided to pull some weight.
Yeah. Well, so it sounds like you had to have a small crew. You couldn't be running around with, 30 people in such a small area.
Well, it worked out. I think, Alton's philosophy was that, hire good people and pay them well and still put out a pretty decent product. And we only worked 10-hour days. It was awesome.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He had a family as well, so he didn't want to work 12 hours. So we were 7 to 6:30, or 7 to 6:30. Yeah. So awesome. It was good to have.
And you guys were like extras too. Like I've seen you on camera a few times. Like if they, we're doing something where like there's 3 guys dressed up as secret agents or whatever.
Yeah, we always carried the same guys. Marshall was always a secret agent. Our Steadicam operator, Ramon, he was always a doctor. He just had that perfect speech, just kind of delivery. He was awesome at it. Our electric guy, David Traylor, he was always the cop. And some other and a couple other recurring characters. He was fun to have. And then we also hired a good pool of comedy actors from Atlanta that became recurring characters on the show as well. But yeah, he didn't want to pay actors. I mean, he paid those guys. But these small little bit pieces, he didn't want to have to pay anybody for it. So he just dressed us up and had us, do these characters. I was always an Amish guy. Because at the time I had a big goatee, and I was Abraham Lincoln, I think, at one point too. But when we first met, I had this really big goatee, real big mutton chops, and it's just like, you look like Abraham Lincoln. When I get an Abraham Lincoln, I'm going to make you Abraham Lincoln, as well as the Amish, because I didn't have a mustache either. So we thought it was perfect. And so I've played a couple Amish people.
Nice.
My favorite hippie. I was a dirty hippie, which was a far stretch, I know. But, the first one, he had a 60s party in the Meatball episode, and I'm like, most of the time I would always refuse to get on. It's like, I'm not somebody who belongs in front of the camera. I don't want to do it. And plus, who's going to do my job? I'm the only guy in my department. I can't wire everybody up, and who's going to mix it? Who's going to record it? And all that. So I always refused. And then he had a 60s party, and I'm like, oh, wait, hold on. I got to get in this. I want to get in the background on this one. So they dressed me up, and I walk out, and everyone's laughing because it's this perfect stereotypical, appearance. And Alton turned around and goes, all right, well, I know a hired guy to do it, but now you're going to do it. You're going to read these lines. I'm like, oh, shit. I didn't say I wanted to talk. So the first time I had to wire myself. That was kind of interesting, and then actually do the show. And so I had to channel my deepest inner Dennis Hopper and play a stoner.
So did you just kind of like set levels on the board and hit record and then hope for the best?
Well, at that time, we had a PA who was interested in doing sound, Brett Saul, and so that's when I felt comfortable being like, all right, dude, you want to do sound? Here you go. Here's your first crack. You got 2 mics. Actually, he had 3. He had 3 mics. I'm like, just get the levels, get it good. I was using I think I was on a 442 at that time. And I was like, just keep it right there, man. You'll be good. I'll do the wiring. You just hit record, practice. Don't worry about the mix if you don't get it right.
Yeah. Well, so you were running to a 442. What was your recorder at the time?
Well, this show was kind of unique. We recorded single system, but never on directly on the camera. So at the time, when I first started shooting on the show, they were shooting on mini DV.
You could tell when you looked at it.
Yeah, they were shooting mini DV, and they weren't recording at the camera because apparently they had issues with this the first 4 seasons of recording the camera. So they've developed this whole system of recording, running the feeds to a central station and recording everything there. And that's where they never needed a sound guy. They just had somebody else recording. So when I came on, they were still recording to these decks. And so my recorder was a deck. And so it was like 2 mini DV decks for A camera and B camera. And I just fed my audio into that and recorded onto that. And then they progressed it into Panasonic's going Varicam when Varicam came out, and started shooting on that. And still just kept that same flow going. I started to record onto my own stuff as well, just because I'm like, I'm going to buy this gear. I'm going to start using it. Through that show, I started collecting gear. Mm-hmm. My first recorder was a 744. And so I started recording on it. They never used that audio, but I still used it and, learned the system and got used to recording onto it. And then I moved into doing some boom recorder to get more tracks out of it, because those mini DVs only got 2 tracks.
Right, yeah.
So this allowed me to start, and then I started incorporating the recorders. I started pulling booms out, plants out, and all that kind of stuff, so I can actually start doing this a little better. And I started turning those files into our post guy. He's so grateful for it. He's like, "Oh my God, I got plant mics now?" I'm like, "I know, it's awesome. No more 2 tracks. We're good."
Yeah, so that show was pretty much just all wireless on everybody.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. The only times there was never a wire was if, because his big thing was putting the camera in these tiny little spaces and trying to get the food in. He was big on Dutch angles early on until HD came around and he had the wider aspect ratio. But so he'd put himself in these positions, and obviously he'd lay right on top of the countertop and get it. So I had to start using plant mics for those situations. So those are, a boom, usually a Sheps, until I moved into 50s, and then and Cubs, which kind of worked from time to time. Yeah. But on that show, man, I started planting mics everywhere I could possibly put them. First time ever planting a plant mic in a plant, I planted it into a wooden spoon at one point. And I remember the really crazy Steadicam shot, and it was one of the, he came right up into the camera, and how anyone leans over, you lose him on the wire. And so it happened all the time on him. And I started getting tired of it. He literally parked himself in front of his little bongo drums with all the spoons and stuff. And I was like, I'm going to put one right in the deepest wooden spoon he had, and made a parabolic out of it. And it worked. And he's like, what the hell are you doing? And then he came back and listened to it, and he goes, good job. And I think that was that one moment where he was like, all right, you're doing pretty damn good. I'm going to keep you.
Well, that's so often, like, you hear from a lot of people is that kind of stuff, the creative side of, it's like sound mixers aren't just button pushers. It's like you're solving all these problems. You're getting creative with miking solutions and how do you do this, taking care of that. At a show like that, where like, yeah, he's, oftentimes like the camera's in the oven. Yeah. Look at you. And then the oven door opens up and there's his head, and it's like, that's the first time I'd ever seen anything like that.
Yeah. Well, Lock, Stock, and Barrel was the first time I saw that. And I kind of teased him a little bit. I'm like, you stole that idea from Lock, Stock, and Barrel, didn't you? Yeah, they have an oven cam shot in that movie. And I was like, oh my God.
Did they? So that oven was I'm assuming it was just for that camera. It wasn't like the oven that they used.
Yes. Yeah. And we never cooked in the oven. No. That's what you mean.
Yeah. Cause I'm like, there could be no back on that oven. Like it's,
well, when they were shooting that mini DV, they did. It was a real oven. No backs were taken off. Neither was the fridge or any of the cabinets. I mean, they ended up using these tiny mini DV cameras that they would just stuff in the corner and then, hit record.
Hope it's in focus.
And when we were forced out of the house, it was actually a blessing because now we had to build a set, and now they took the backside of everything. And that allowed him to do so many more moves inside the fridge. Then he was able to start moving from one shelf to the next shelf to the next shelf, and really, moving in and out of the oven, all the cabinet shots that he was able to get more. So, it was a blessing in disguise for him for his creativity, because now I no longer had to use those tiny little cameras, and, the quality of those are not the best.
Yeah. It's that show, in terms of a cooking show, obviously it was like, it took it to another level in terms of like,
it was a food show.
Well, that's true. Yeah. It's not like the Julia Childs, Yeah, it wasn't like, today we're going to make a beef Wellington with mashed potatoes. It's like, no, today's topic is asparagus or blueberries.
Yeah. We joked about that all the time. It was a food show, not a plop and stir. That's what we always call them. It was plop, stir, bake. Yeah. No, he got into the science of it and the history of it. That's what made it interesting. It was awesome. And now they're bringing it back.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I read somewhere online that it was coming back, and that, it was literally a couple days ago. I'm like, oh wow! Are you involved in that at all, or are you just too busy?
Yeah. Moved on. He's been traveling around with some of the same crew that we used to shoot with. Lamar, who was a camera guy on all the Feasting on Asphalt series that we did, and our key prop guy Todd Bailey and him have been going out on the road doing these live shows in between, since he left Good Eats and started doing some of these other Food Network shows. Our music guy who did all the music for the show, he goes out on tour with them and plays, I think, bass in the band. I mean, they have a full band and everything. It's kind of crazy. So there's going to be a few, I'm sure, consistencies. But yeah, most of the crew has moved on to other stuff. I know Ramon is a big time Steadicam operator here in town, and
wow.
The time that to do those shows and what he makes doing that, I don't know, I can't answer him, but I know my time's eaten up now.
Yeah. Well, then after that, you guys did Feasting on Asphalt, which was a really interesting idea in terms of from the production side and the logistics side, but also from the viewer side. It's like, wow, they're riding motorcycles across the country.
Yeah.
It's like a dream for a lot of, it's like so many people, I just want to eat my way across the country.
All right.
And then when that came out, because that was, I think 2000, I'm looking here, I think it was 2006. It's like, I kind of knew more about production, and it's weird. It doesn't seem like it was 2006 to 2008, and it doesn't seem like it was that long ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that looked like it was like a lot of interesting challenges on the audio side, because he's riding and he's got a camera that he's looking down at that I guess was on his gas tank or on the handlebars.
Mm-hmm.
And he's talking. And at that point I was riding a motorcycle. I'm like, oh man, that looks like that was tough.
Yeah.
Were you riding too, or were you in a follow truck? Or
the scene that you're referring to, we actually recorded after the fact. He was like, I need to do this shot, or I want to do this. What can I do? And he used his little mini DV camera again, or I can't remember if it was file based at that point. I don't think it was, but he mounted his rig on there. What I did is it was just him. He needed to do it on his own. No one was really there. I gave him the 744 and wired a lav to it, and he had his motorcycle jacket on, and I just told him, frame this out, and I had a lav rig built literally right below the frame line, and he just talked right into it. And it was like I built this paper clip cage of zeppelins and whatnot around the lava. Literally, you can imagine of the lava coming up, and then I built a cage around it, put some of the low fur I had, just spare of, and then built another cage around that, and then put another layer of the fur around. So basically built like 2 different cages so he could go up to like 30 miles an hour without really getting any wind.
Wow.
Never kill him. And it was pretty transparent. It worked out pretty well. It was like a one-off. I did it once and never it pretty much fell apart after that, but it worked for the one thing. And I had him Velcroed inside of his motorcycle jacket. So it mounted literally right there, came off his chest and just hovered right out of frame.
Wow. Because then they're like these like little furry live wind covers really weren't as popular at that point.
Yeah, none of that was available at that time. I mean, I ended up putting even the big windscreen on top. It was a Sanken, so the big high wind windscreen, even in the middle. So I had 3 layers of wind protection going on a lavalier. But even prior to that, that was actually the first time I started employing the first piece on Asphalt was when I bought a TRX 900 AA. And I planted that on his body. And so he was rolling audio for 12 hours every single day because he would walk away. It's the first real big documentary I ever had to do. And knowing Alton, he doesn't like to do things in front of people that he doesn't need to be in front of. So he has a little handy cam. He would just start walking away, just drifting away from the whole crew and everything, starting to talk about whatever he wanted to. None of it was scripted. And so I started putting a TRX on him and just... Well, I did it from the beginning, and because I knew he told me he was going to do this, and I'll just follow you around. He was like, "You're not following me around." I'm like, all right, fine. So I just put the TRX on him and recorded them all day, and then dumped the files at the end of the day and turned them in with the tapes that he had, and let post sync it up, which I ended up syncing up later myself because I had a Pro Tools rig in the studio that I had going on. I was doing a little bit of post production, and syncing time code at that point was really a pain in the butt. I was burnt. I was using the Zaxcom system to send a mono track to 1 and a time code track to 2, and hoping that they would be able to pluralize it or do whatever they not pluralize. I wasn't even out then, but using linear time code to sync it up, and they were having problems, of course. So I ended up doing it at home and syncing every single cut that they did. They cut the show, and then I took all my files that I had and literally laid each one in. And they paid me for it, so I didn't mind. Right.
So yeah, wow. So you did so they cut the show with the onboard camera mic, and then
the scratch track that I found there.
Oh, okay.
That didn't get interference from being too far away. At that time, the Zaxcoms, when they drop out, you get that digital hash, and then nothing comes back again. So that happened from time to time. So they just rode that out, and then I came in and put in the original track, which was great because now I know it was my stuff.
Right. So, but that's if he's off doing that, you don't have a set. Okay, we've got this shot, this shot, this shot. It's just you never know. You could have 7-8 hours of footage every day.
Yeah.
How did you keep track of? Okay, because were you doing sound reports?
I was doing my own sound reports on a computer in between when we got in the van. So the production crew, which was me, Lamar, and Rahman in a follow van. And we just followed the 4 motorcyclists. And while we're in between, while they were actually driving, I was in the back seat, logging in all the data, everything that we shot. And I was helping to take notes for our editor at the time as well, because there was nobody here to take notes. Like, she needed to know what the hell we did that day. And so I would put in extensive notes in so she knew at least what to kind of look for. I was her best friend. So it was a very busy show.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, because that sounds nuts. That sounds like a tremendous amount of data to have to sift through and then resync.
It was a lot of work. But it was fun, man. Driving across country, going east to west, right down the middle was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. Going the land topography changes so much from state to state, going in that direction, and time zone to time zone. It's just fantastic. I always tell people about that trip and how amazing it is if you ever get a chance to do it. We went from Savannah to LA and just went right through the middle of the country.
Oh, you guys didn't go through Texas where?
Nope.
I've driven through Texas, like through the wide part where it takes 2 days to get across, and you really don't see a whole lot of anything. But
yeah, I did on the way back. I drove the van back, and I took it all the way through. I went down 40, went through Arizona.
Oh, you did that? That's how I got here to Tennessee from LA, or from San Marcos was that route. Yeah. Yeah, no, I did the drive. When I moved to LA, I went to school in Chicago, but I grew up in central Illinois in a little town called Morton, and went up through Iowa, Nebraska. So it was a little bit north of that, but then went through Utah. Utah is like, holy cow.
I love Utah. It holds a special place in my heart. I love that. And we went through Utah on that show, got arrested and everything. It was awesome. Well, we didn't go to jail, but we got some handcuffs and a big old $500 fine.
What'd you guys do? Like, were you drinking alcohol or something?
No, we're filming. No, it was little filming renegades. So we end up pulling into Zion National Park as we're driving through Utah. It's my first time through Zion. And we come in on the eastern side. When you come in on the eastern side, you go through the tunnels before you bust out into the big valley. And so we had this idea that, our camera guy got on the tailgate of the truck that we were driving, and Elton got in front. We just doing B-roll through this tunnel. Well, you can't really film in a national park without a permit. We were just going to wing it. He's like, he just wants this one shot, so who cares? So as we're driving through, there's a ranger sitting right at the tunnel entrance, and we come through and he just turns. He's like,
the guy with the camera hanging off the thing.
He grabs a walkie. We're like, all right, guys, we're in trouble. He grabbed his walkie. And so obviously, they're not going to come at us while we're in, but as soon as we busted out the tunnel, and they pulled us over. And gave us a big fine and told us to get out.
Oh, man.
Get out. That's all. So, but it was an interesting ordeal. It was fun. So we couldn't use any of that footage, but it was a great time.
It's been a while, so I can't remember all this
footage. Never even talked. I think we might have talked about getting arrested. I'm not sure, but it was my first introduction to Zion, and that place is amazing. And Utah, it's just wow, so fantastic. And we ended up in Mexican Hat, Utah, which is right outside of that, which is an amazing place to eat.
Yeah, I bet you had a lot of really great food on that.
Yeah, so good.
Did you have your stops planned out, or was it like, we're going to go until we see something interesting?
Most of it was see something interesting. There were a few key points that we wanted to get to on the show. Like there was the first Kentucky Fried Chicken that was in Kentucky. We wanted to go talk about Betty Crocker in Bowling Green. I think that was actually the Kentucky Fried Chicken. But and then there was Ted Drew's in St. Louis. And then I think even in Utah, there's a swinging grill he wanted to go see. So there's a few key points, but most of the show that ended up getting aired, a lot of it was us just driving past a place, and he was like, whoa, slow down, turned around, and walked right on in. And that was such a challenge because I was telling him, I was like, dude, do we have to just barge in? Like, I can't hear that person you're talking to all the way down. We don't have a mic on. It's like, you're the only one with a mic, man. He's like, don't worry, we'll get it. So we finally started letting us, barge in, do an immediate first introduction, and then allow me to actually get a mic on something. Some people never even got a mic. Cooking in those loud kitchens and stuff. But it gave a great sense of reality to it. It wasn't, when you walk in on a show and everyone's mic'd and they're all acting like they first met each other, it kind of defeats that sense.
Right.
So I also had to agree with him on that point. So we ended up just rolling with it, finding a happy medium.
Did you ever have anybody be like, nah, get out?
No. Most people were pretty happy to have a camera crew in there. Shocked.
Yeah.
I think there might have been some shy people that decided not to be on camera, but usually they were cool with the publicity.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you, there was an episode where there was eating brain. Did you ever get in on that?
Yeah, I did. There was one place, I take it back, when we were doing Feasting on Waves, we went into a place and they were like, no, you got to go. And so Alton went in there and I was recording him. I recorded him, and then he came out with like pasties and stuff. So they wouldn't let us in, but I obviously recorded. That was the only time we had nobody show up. The brain thing, yeah, I tasted that. I tasted everything that was on there. But I'm a big believer in that. It's like I even tell my kids this every time they look at something and they tell me it looks they don't want to taste it. I don't like it. It's like, you don't know you don't like it. You got to try it. I mean, there's so many different options out there. And that's one great thing with working on that show is having the opportunity to taste so many different foods. I was there for 10 years, so I got a lot of different tastes and techniques as well, which kind of drives some people crazy. But yeah, I ate that brain. It wasn't that tasty. I wouldn't do it again. Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember just watching that. And even he was kind of like, I don't know about this.
Yeah. You got to taste it so you don't like it.
Yeah, no.
And he started this whole like feeding me thing as well. They would all sit down and start eating, and they're like, Mike, sit down and eat. And I'm like, what do you mean? You guys are rolling cameras, you're eating. I can't sit down. I got my bag here. I'm booming. I can't. What do you mean eat? So he goes, all right, well, fine. They turned the camera on me and just started feeding me while I was working. And doing a shtick throughout that whole series, which is kind of fun. It's kind of
do you get SAG pay for that?
Right? I should have, but no.
So Georgia's a right to work state, right?
Yes.
So how does that work with unions? And
it works fine. Productions are very tied in with IATSE down here, and they want to hire union people as well. And as union members, we tend to hire union members.
So, yeah, because I don't understand all the inner workings, and it's like the way I understand it is like you don't have to be a union member to work on a union thing.
You don't have to be, but a lot of times you're not going to get the call if you're not.
Okay. And like, I'm just curious. I'm not like union one way or the other because like, LA. I can't claim that I know the ins and outs of the whole union either, but I mean, in terms of what you're talking about, that's pretty much as simple as it gets. Yeah, because it's when you're newer, because I remember in LA, people are like, yo, you got to join the union as a sound editor when I was interning. And I'm like, what? Like, why? Yeah. I didn't understand any of that.
Yeah.
And, it's like I wanted to go work at Sound Deluxe. They were like, are you union? No. Well, then you can't work here. I'm like, but why? I know what but yeah, you got to be. But like, I got to spend $1,500 to join this. Like, I didn't understand.
Yeah.
And that was, to me at the time when I was in my early to mid 20s, it was a big, like, kind of left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. But now I understand. Like now as I'm older, especially when you live in like a production town, and you're driving, like if you're driving around Hollywood. And you see, like, the streets there are like, some of them are pretty narrow, like around Paramount and stuff. And you see the Teamsters driving those big trucks, and you're like, well, I'm glad that's a union guy in there because I know he's not going to hit me. They know what they're doing. Yeah. And they can put those, and then you just watch them work, and it's like, okay, yeah, I get it now.
Yeah, I didn't get into the union until 2009. So most of my career has been non.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I was 9 years in. It's great. I can always tell how many years I've been by what year it is. 17 years right now. 2009 is when I got in, and I haven't done a non-union since. But I wanted to get into doing the bigger shows, so it's just kind of a requirement. I was able to do Good Eats. That wasn't a union show, but he paid union wages and he followed union benefits.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things I think in Atlanta, which maybe not a lot of people understand or get, is that even though you're not, even on the productions that I was on that were non-union, we still followed union guidelines. They still gave us turnarounds. They still gave us, 6 hours before lunch. The simple things that everyone really mattered. What it matters to me. And then they paid us commercial rate. It was awesome.
Wow, that's real.
We just didn't get the health benefits. Is one of the big things that we didn't get. We got paid more. So.
Yeah, that's so like different from, LA where it's like they're $100 a day, all in 12-hour days.
There are those as well. I mean, it's not like they're all like that. But if you're in with a legitimate company, a legitimate production company in town, that not all production houses are signatories of IATSE, but they still do follow those guidelines, even when it comes to pay scale. I mean, the ones that I've worked with, things have changed in that sector since I've moved on to doing different types of shows as the career has gotten better. So I can't really answer confidently how that market is, but in the past it had been like that.
Yeah. Well, I had always with feasting on asphalt. I always thought it would have been cool because I lived in Chicago for 4 years in college, and it's like, man, it would have been cool to see like hit the big cities, do Chicago, St. Louis, like, and like what those towns are known for. You know, Chicago with the deep dish, and then,
Right. Well, we wanted to stay off the major highways. It was all backcountry.
Oh, okay.
We stayed only on U.S. highways, no interstates. I mean, we occasionally had to do an interstate to get to like Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And I think there was a stretch in the Midwest where we had to as well, but they were just to get from one point to another, or because we're falling behind in schedule and we just needed to get on the road and put some miles between us. But usually we're all off the beaten path. So we didn't hit any of the major cities. St. Louis was one of them, Las Vegas.
Well, I guess it makes for a more interesting show too that way, because it's like, okay, everybody knows Chicago has deep dish pizza. Let's go where people haven't seen before.
Yeah. It's about the people, the small mom and pop places that are, doing their passion. Because if you're in a small town like that, cooking like that, it's a passion of yours. You're not doing it to make a whole lot of money.
Yeah, well, there's I see a lot of that here in Middle Tennessee. There's just a ton of that. Here's barbecue. There's barbecue places all over the place. And,
sure.
It's and then now you see like what's that? Diners, drive-ins, and dives. It's kind of like that. You could tell is like heavily inspired. There's not a lot of road footage, but it's go around.
All around, we kind of joked about how the similarities that just popped up right after that show ours first aired, and we've noticed. But at least we were able to do full on documentary style kind of stuff and that, so it's a little bit different. It was nice, and the waves, just touring the Caribbean for 25 days, who couldn't go wrong with that?
Yeah, even my dad, who doesn't watch like food shows or anything like that, we told him about it. Like, Dad, you got to see, because he's retired now, but he'd been wanting a motorcycle forever and still doesn't have one. We're like, you got to watch this show. These guys are riding across the country on bikes eating. And then he got into it, and he was super into the show. Yeah. And but I just love it still maintains some of the good eats aspects of
the history of it,
and I'm glad to hear Good Eats is coming back. It'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, I'd like to see it as well.
Sometimes, like when Walking Dead is airing, there's that, and maybe one other show at the same time. Whether it depends on what part of the year it is. Mm-hmm. And with two shows, like. My wife works full time. I'm working full time, 4 kids, and especially during the school year. It's like, man, we're lucky if we have time to we DVR them and watch them whenever we can.
Yeah.
It's
crazy. I was the same way. I was watching a lot of TV. I've actually stopped watching TV because I don't have the time, especially in this last year. So it's kind of realized I'm paying these huge bills, not even enjoying the aspect. Right. And you get so backed up. I just don't want. I'm not a big binge viewer. It takes a lot of time out. So I'm with you, man. It's hard to find the time to watch a lot of these amazing shows.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I hear really good things about Orange is the New Black and all these other shows, and there's really great.
I'm going to Westworld. I'm going to check out Westworld. I haven't had a chance to see that.
Yeah, if you have HBO Go, like if you have HBO, you can sit down in front of your TV, but they also have the app. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I'll catch stuff on my tablet. Like I don't travel a ton, but if I do,
that's the only time I've been able to actually binge watch it on an airplane flight to LA. You can do half a season go out and half a season come back.
Yeah, but yeah. There's and the cool thing about that is HBO has a lot of. I mean, Oz is on there. I don't know if you remember Oz, the prison show.
Oh, yeah.
And not Hamilton's the musical. John Adams, I think, is the one with Paul Giamatti. Mm-hmm. It's just like a one miniseries, and it's absolutely amazing. My sister, who's a historian, she knows that era is her specialty, and she watched it, and she's like, "Yeah, no, this is really amazing. You have to see this.
Yeah.
Like, people aren't wearing clothes with zippers. Like, that kind of stuff really gets her goat. When she sees an old period show and there's a zipper, they didn't have zippers. It's like when when we're watching a movie and it's in the 70s and there's a courtroom scene and you see like a Shep cement, you're like, no, they didn't have those then.
Right. Yeah. Well, even on Stranger Things, we've had a couple, newscaster situations, and the props people asking me if I have any mics. I'm like, yeah, I got tons of mics, but none of them are going to fit this 1980s period at all. They're like, oh, well, yeah, true.
So what do? Do you like call around and see who has?
We just didn't end up having one on them.
Oh, okay.
As far as I can remember. Yeah. I told them to just go find a Sony EMC 50 or whatever those were back then. Those big honking.
Oh, the big lavaliers.
Yeah, the big, wired, not wireless, but plugged in, big fatties. And I worked with a couple of those when I first started. Had them in the kit as an option, backup.
Yeah. Yeah, the they had the whole ECM series. There's like the 44, the 55.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, the 44 was like it was like a flail. You could whip it around and hit someone with it. It was a big honking beast.
Yeah, actually, Whit Norris, I think, used some of those. I think he ended up rewiring them for Sankins for Anchorman. Anchorman being a period piece, he ended up grabbing a couple of those and hollowing them out and then putting Sankins inside of them.
Oh wow! I mean, they weren't bad sounding mics. They're pretty good. They're a little thinner. I remember Coffee Sound. I had sold a bunch of them because they were really inexpensive at the time.
Yeah.
For like a hardwired lav, but it's like good luck hiding it.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
Perfect newscaster mic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but yeah, man, that's it's just really cool that that you're able to do, like, I mean, you're doing two huge shows.
Oh yeah. Well, I gotta be thankful for other mixers that are able to help fill in. I had Drew Ponder, so it's a complete overlap. It started off not being an overlap, but it ended up being a major overlap in between these two seasons here.
I lost your audio. What happened?
Got me again? Still there?
Oh, yeah, there you are. I don't know what happened.
I'll start that over again.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it was a challenge when I first got the show. It lined up perfectly. We're wrapping out on April 28th, start shooting the dead on May 1st. I mean, I had a weekend. Couldn't get it any closer or any tighter. And then ended up being pushed and ended up being over a month into overlap, and that's where the big challenge kind of came in. Originally, it wouldn't be an issue. It lined up just perfectly. And it didn't. So they ended up having Drew Ponder take over the first 2 episodes of this current season of The Walking Dead. So he helped me out majorly. I sent my guys over there so that they could keep that consistency on that show. And then I brought in Joey Mayerhoff and Max back again, and
nice.
Finish off Stranger Things while we finished that off. And then it got even more extended, and I had to have Mike Schmidt come in and take over on Stranger Things. So I finally went over and picked up on the dead. And it was a challenge. And, I hear a lot of guys do it all the time, jump in shows from one to the next. I tried to make it happen. We made it happen, and we'll see if we can do it again.
Did how many more seasons do you think, like, do they know for Walking Dead, like, oh, we've got another 2 seasons probably, or is it just kind of go as you go? And
it just goes. I mean, everyone rumors, everyone talks. What do you think? No one, it's a year-to-year contract. We don't do multiple years. We just go one to the next. I got to imagine it's got to end at some point. And how would you? Comic book that continues to keep getting written, you got to end a story on TV that hasn't been ended on the comics. And how do you do this? Kind of like a Game of Thrones issue where, the show's getting ahead of the comics or the books being written. I mean, different, but.
Right. Oh, yeah. No, I was a big fan of those. I actually listened to the audiobooks. I tried reading them. I'm like, this writing style, I couldn't hang for a read, but I was able to listen to it. But I was watching the show, the Game of Thrones, with my wife. I was like, okay, yeah, now we're past the books. So
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what happens.
Right. Yeah. And with the comics, we kind of know what's going to happen, and we just kind of wait to see how our showrunner puts it all together and how he's going to tell it on the screen, or how he's not going to tell it on the screen. You know, given some people dying in different ways and excuse me, all that jazz. We kind of feel like maybe 10. We're on 8 right now. Maybe 2 more.
Yeah, tell them I'm pissed off that they killed off Abraham. By the way, he was.
Yeah. I mean, you know, he should have died earlier, technically.
Yeah, you know, I read a little bit of the comics, and then I was like, you know what? It was this weird. I don't know why. I was just like, I don't want to read the comics anymore. I just want to watch the show. The comics were good, but I don't want to be one of those guys where it's like, oh, well, they did it different in the comics. You know, like this did happen here, and because some characters on the show don't exist in the comics, or some of them are like combinations of, you know, different characters, and I just didn't want to be one of those guys.
Yeah.
So.
Well, they're coming around pretty good to get back on track on the comics. I think the first couple of years they ended up drifting a little bit, and then they ended up changing showrunners, and now they've kind of brought it back in and have kind of really stuck to the comics pretty good, with the occasional surprise from here and there, because you got to keep people on their toes.
Yeah, you have to, because everybody that had read them was like, oh yeah, Glenn's going to be the one that gets it. It's going to be Glenn. It's going to be Glenn. And,
I mean, that was kind of it's a gimme. I mean,
yeah.
if Andy, you can't hide that one at all. So I think that's why they snuck in, you know, the Abraham one.
Well, I honestly, I was like, it's going to be Maggie that gets it. I thought Maggie, I'm like, that would be, yeah. Like that would be when, what was the character that got it in the revolving door? Was his name Noah?
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh shit. Like that was a bad one. And I thought if Negan kills Maggie, like that would be double evil.
Well, you know,
but she's such a good character.
She has such a huge story arc after that in the comics that, you know, they'd have to give that to somebody else, and you couldn't really do that. You know, that storyline's got to play out. I feel, as if I was a writer, that the whole Maggie Glenn dynamic of her, you know, losing him and then moving on into a different chapter of her life. You know, if you killed her, then I guess you'd have to flip it and give it to Glenn.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. It's, you know, it's not easy. It's interesting. You kind of how you think it would be easy writing off of a comic book that's already been written, but yet still be able to keep it. You know, it's tough for the writers to keep it always interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so that show. I mean, you're mostly now exteriors. It seems a lot.
Last year was pretty much all exteriors. You know, we have. There's a lot of locations. There's a lot of sections right now. So there's a lot of different places. But yeah, we're still outdoors most of the time. You know, we'll have an episode or two where we're inside for a lot of it, but
yeah, I mean, like last season you were at the beach. There was the beach episode with the beach ladies.
Yeah.
And
you got the hilltop. You got Alexandria. You got the saviors. I mean,
you got the garbage people, and I loved Negan's line. He's like, "Those garbage people are weird, man." It's like he said what everybody else was thinking.
Yeah.
And
they're weird. The guys are kind of off kilter just a little bit.
Yeah, and it's like, well, I won't get into all the fan base stuff, but there's some things where you're like, they had a pit where they had a walker down in there. It was like reminded me of the scene from the original Conan movie where he's growing up and he's pit fighting. Yeah. It's like, so they've got the garbage pit fighter down in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you know, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know all of them, but you know, I think that was a Nicotero episode. I can't remember or not, but you know, Greg does this great job of trying to pull in these cult characters into these walkers. Older walkers, you know, he calls them tribute walkers because they're a tribute to something in the past, whether it's a show he's done, a walker he's created, or it's a homage to another artist out there. I wouldn't doubt if that was something.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, some of the most extravagant ones tend to be something that's hidden. You know, it doesn't really talk about it, but it's there, and it's for those. It's a little Easter egg for those that follow that zombie special effects makeup world.
Okay, I didn't know that. I'm gonna have to look at.
There might be a behind the scenes for that. I'm sure for that episode we had EPK back there, and there's probably a story on that walker. And if it's in there, it's gonna be. If it's anything like that, it'll be in there. AMC's got it all over their websites.
Yeah, I haven't like the show the after show Talking Dead. I haven't really looked at that because usually by the time we watch the show off the DVR, we're like, oh, it's time for bed.
2-hour extravaganza every Sunday.
Yeah, I'm not that hardcore. I just can't
do it.
But yeah. So what's your? This is one question that I want to ask everybody. Like, what's your favorite piece of gear? From whenever, it doesn't have to be right now. From whenever, it could be from college, and it could be from post or music or whatever.
Gosh, gear, jeez. Can I say people? Like
sure.
Dennis and Alan and Max, the boom operators and utilities of this world. I mean, gear-wise, I feel like there's so much that's out there. I mean, aside from the guys, I mean, God, got the best crew,
Well, yeah, well, they say it's about the archer, not the arrows,
Yeah, and it totally is. I mean, there's a few little gadgets that we've come up with that nobody really has, like first half of the last season, I had Charles German out with us, and we magically discovered this mount that we call the Mondo Mount, and we use it now to plant mics. And it's this. We're out on highways, from time to time, and we have broken up girders and whatnot. And they're the rubber stoppers in between the girders and the piece that goes into the ground.
Oh, okay.
Black rubber stoppers. They're called Mondos. And they perfectly fit an MM1 and a transmitter clipped into the middle, and the mic can clip with a clip in a extension arm, and it's wide, it's based, it's heavy, and you just drop it, and there's your plant mic.
Wow.
And we have it riding on our cart. You can't get it in any stores and whatnot. And Charles is kind of like, we need to market this. And it's kind of a pretty cool tool. We put a bottom on it so nothing you can get up into it and whatnot. And it's just this big black rubber thing that you can't get anywhere else. That's a pretty cool little tool. That's
always the fun stuff. You see when I love visiting and talking to people, and like you see stuff that they've come up with and they built, and you're like, that's super cool. And when I was at K-Tech, I'm like, I wonder if that's something we could
Yeah, I remember you that was when you were on K-Tech, you would often find little gadgets. I think we could make that.
Yeah, it's like that's cool. And it's like, can we sell 20 or can we sell 500?
Yeah.
If you only sell 20, it's like, it's not.
Yeah. I wish I had the Mondo here. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of a cool little tool. And then I would just call it the Mondo. Hey, bring the Mondo out.
Nice.
It's a 50 with a MM1 and a transmitter on it, and just run it out there, and he'll drop it next to the camera. Because we shoot we're always shooting with 3 cameras. We only got a 3-person crew, so we can't cover perspective on every single camera. And sometimes we get into 4 cameras and 5 cameras. So we pop plant mics out for every single one of those cameras for a perspective mic, since we don't have a body to put it on. So we have these mounts, so we have a Mondo that can go next to one. We have another stand that I think I got pulled from Robert Sharman's idea years ago of using the ladder. I've used these ladder, boom stands that he kind of came up with for years now, and pop one of those on each one of the cameras. Got 2 of those. So we can plop those all over. If we have 5 cameras, then put Dennis on one and Alan on another one, just to get perspective for all these.
Wow.
Thanks, because a lot of times you can't even get in there with a boom.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to say, how much of the show is boom versus wireless? Because it's pretty nutty. It's all over the place.
Yeah, it depends on the scene, a lot of it is wires because of, just the shooting style. We try to get them. We ask nicely. Sometimes that's where the sibling rivalry comes in. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. And, you get these big wide shots and punching in for a freaking Chester to head at the same time. You're like, come on, man. Ain't got time. Got to move. I mean, we shoot a mini movie. It's amazing. We shoot it in 8 days. And we hear about a lot of shows that are either not as big or are as big, end up shooting 12-day episodes, or I think, God, Boardwalk Empire, I heard rumors, I don't know this for sure, for like 18 to 20 days, per episode. I'd have to check Frank and see if he can confirm that one, but it's ridiculous. I think 8 is kind of the standard, but the grand scope of our show is so big that it's a challenge to make it in 8 days, and yet we do.
Yeah.
we have a couple different paces. In the beginning of the day, we kind of move a little slower. By the end of the day, it's balls to the wall, just flooring it. Nothing matters, if you're not on point, then it didn't make the cut.
Well, then, yeah, especially there's some episodes like the season finale. Was it? I can't remember if it was the season finale where Negan's revealed, and they're driving in the camper, and they're going and it's like they're driving around, so you're following them as the day goes on. So there's a logistics.
The other thing, they stick us in campers that they actually drive. It's no process trailer. The actors are actually driving that. We have 2 cameras in those things, and then try to sneak a boom in there to try to wire to boom it as well. You got cameras shooting all over the place, and plant mic options get eliminated pretty quickly. So yeah, you're riding wires quite a bit, hoping that you can get in there with some close up that you're going to carry the dialogue on a boom, but then consistency wise has to hold up. So yeah, it's a huge challenge. All those cars. We haven't done a process trailer on that show since season 3.
Wow.
Every car that you see on the show is driven by the actor, and there's a sound bag dropping back. Record and see you later.
Yeah, I remember the last time I was there was Sasha and Abraham driving that car when they were when I was there. No one would tell me who was shooting at them, but they were getting shot at. But yeah, I think she was driving the car, and there's cameras mounted on, and they would come right by us. And
yeah, and we don't get the quietest of cars. They can't seem to stumble across a Prius dealership or anything.
A Chevy Volt.
Yeah, they're all 1970 junkers that some barely even start half the time. I mean, poor Michael Purvis, our transportation guy who handles all of our cars. Sometimes he's just like, it won't start. Having to get it to start. Eventually, he makes it start. We get moving, and we just all joke about it. It's so ridiculous sometimes.
Well,
that's the kind of cars they have in that era.
In a way, it's when you're doing a zombie show, it's like, okay, how much of it is like accurate scientifically, right? But for a while on Discovery would air these shows that were like how to survive in the post-apocalypse, and when 28 Days Later really became huge, and like when zombie fiction really made the comeback in the early 2000s, so everybody was like, well, how would you survive? And a lot of them were like the older like carbureted cars, or like older like diesels, like those are your best bet to have a running vehicle, because you could just chuck cooking oil in them, and
right, yeah, good point.
They'll run for a little while, and then they'll.
Yeah, but I argue with the producers all the time, saying if you had a Prius, the zombies wouldn't hear you driving down the road. It's like you get these loud clunkers. Like Daryl drives a motorcycle. You think he's not pulling walkers behind him all day long?
Yeah, but it's a cool bike. For somebody who needs to ride, it's like
all about image.
that's a cool bike, and I always said if I was the motorcycle's smart, and his is a really cool bike because it's not quite a dual sport, but it kind of is. He's got the big wheels. Yeah. So, if he had to go off-road, he could. But my big thing was always, and you can't do this for a TV show because you wouldn't know who the character was, but I was like, you go and you raid a bike shop and you get the full face helmet and the leathers with the armor and the gloves and the boots. No walkers biting through any of that. And you could just ride right through a crowd of them.
Well, it's like the Kingdom. I mean, they raided a Dunham sports good store to get all of their, catchers. They have all the catcher armor, lacrosse armor, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, but I hope we get at least a couple more seasons out of the show. I mean, we look for, it's like Thrones, Game of Thrones, and Walking Dead. Like Thrones is starting up here on the 16th, I think. So we're all like, what's gonna happen?
Can't wait to see.
And but when Dead starts back up, we're always like, all right, you know, and that's one of the few ones when we usually we can't watch it when it airs because we're usually like getting kids ready for bed. But
Yeah.
as soon as all that's done, we fire out the DVR because I don't want to hear people talk about it or seeing Facebook posts about.
It's one of those shows. Yeah.
So.
Which is why, you know, the binging with Netflix where they'll unload the entire season at once. It's like, oh gosh, so you have to watch. If you're into that, you have to watch it because all of a sudden everyone's going to be on the next day or two once they finally get the 8 episodes in. So we're talking about the entire season.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out of a Saturday and
hey, you're welcome, brother.
You know, spending time and this has been really cool. You know, I haven't seen you in a long time. I haven't been able to get down to Atlanta for a while.
Good seeing you again.
Yeah. So
everyone says hello. Yeah, thanks for having me down on this. This has been pretty amazing. I really loved what you did with Jan, and I think it's pretty awesome that you're doing this. So look forward to hearing about all these other sound mixers and their path to this thing. Because it seems like a good conversation piece of seeing everyone comes in a different way.
Yeah, everybody has a really interesting story, and you know, I wanna hear about how, you know, because there's younger folks that are, you know, only a few years in, and it's like they're already, you know, they've got a bag with a 688 and a bunch of SRCs. I'm like, how the hell did you do that? And they're working on real gigs. They're like, wow, you know, what's that about? And, yeah, it's like we all have a story, and everybody's is really interesting, and that's I kind of want to hear it. You know, everybody like working on shows that are have different requirements and different challenges to meet, and how you guys deal with that. It's so interesting to me.
Yeah,
you know, I'm very much behind.
You can be on the biggest show on TV, and I learned this quickly. You know, coming from the dead, thinking I can do. Oh God, what we'd have to go through on that show, everything's going to be a piece of cake, and then each show has its own set of challenges, its own set of people and environments. Yeah, it's tough.
So,
well, thanks, brother. It's been good.
All right, I will let you know when. I'll give you a link before I make this live. It'll probably be early next week, so you could see it if you want. Because we're rolling at we're over at an hour and a half now, which is about kind of seems to where things are landing, which is fine.
Cool, man.
So
appreciate it. Look forward to seeing it. And look forward to seeing the others.
All right, man. Have a good one. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
See ya. Bye. Do yourself a favor and subscribe right now, because when you do, you'll get notified when I upload new videos with lots of cool information. Information that I learned from lots of expensive college and years of experience. Only you get it for free. So subscribe right now.